I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Four Nights of a Dreamer.
Before we get into this week's film, next week we're going to be watching Jack Turner's Cat People. I've only ever seen Paul Schrader's Cat People, and I don't think I've seen a Jack Turner film at all. No, according to Letterboxd, I've seen zero of his films, but you've seen
I like Out of the
Out of the
Past.
Past. Okay,
Yeah,
is
Out of
that
the
the only
Past
one
was a
you've
good.
seen?
Yeah, that's the only one I've seen. It's a good noir film.
Interesting. It looks like he has a lot of those old school kind of 1940s and 50s monster movies, like I Walked with a Zombie, Night of the Demon. What's this one? The Leopard Man. So I'm interested to watch some of his stuff. Interested to see what this guy is all about. Plus, I've seen Paul Schrader's Cat People, and that I mean it's Paul Schrader, so it's
Do you
weird.
remember anything about it?
No, it's been a long
Yeah,
time. I
okay.
watched it
Well,
like
there you go.
6 or 7 years ago because it
It's
was when
like
I was
it's
watching
like
like all of his Paul Schrader stuff.
it's just like the title is just what it is. Like it's about people that turn into cats. Like that's it. Like yeah, Cat People's more like yeah, like the Schrader version is obviously very 80s, 70s esque.
Yeah,
So
very Schrader looking. It has like a lot of reds and greens, and he loved his lights. So I'm excited. But this week we watched one of arguably the greatest directors of all time, Robert Bresson's Four Nights with a Dreamer,
yep.
which good movie.
Late period, Bresson.
It is,
Um,
yeah. Well, I mean, what else did because Bresson did not do a lot of films. You go onto Letterboxd and see how many films he directed. He only directed a dozen films. Not even that. One, two, three,
You know,
four, five.
bro, he's crazy too. I just like realized too, like recently, like he was born in September 1901 and he died in December 1999. He lived like
He's an
throughout the
old man.
he
He
lived
lived the entire century.
the entire 20th century. Crazy guy. I can't believe that. But his last movie, he died in 99 and his last movie was in 83. And this is his like fourth to last movie that he came out with.
Okay, so he still had
Um,
several movies after this.
yeah, I like late period Bresson. You know, I like early Bresson, like, you know, A Man Escaped and like Pickpocket and stuff like that. Like those movies are obviously some of the best movies ever made in the history of time.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been like watching more like late period Bresson and he he was cooking with it too. And I like his movies in color too. They look really good. Um, and Four Nights of a Dreamer. Four Nights of a Dreamer is kind of funny because it's like um um it's like it's an interesting movie because like I think it's like been out of print for a while, or it's like it's one of those movies where the distribution is kind of fucked up.
Oh yeah.
So it got remastered in 4K in 2024. So like 50 years later or something like that. And it like I think it really just only got officially onto streaming like of March of this year, like on
That's
Criterion when we
crazy.
watched it. So a lot of people are probably watching it for the first time. Because before you probably had to like, you know, watch it. You probably had to watch it like in a really not great scan of it online with subtitles that were written by probably just a guy. Like, well,
Yeah.
you know, movies are translated by guys all the time, but you know what I mean, like by like a fan,
Hmm.
unofficially.
Yeah.
So, so it's nice to see it. I wish I would have been able to see it in the theater. Would have been a good movie to see in the theater. And like when when they were rolling out the restoration,
Hmm.
probably a couple of years ago, would have been good to see. They probably played it in New York City and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, this movie's kind of funny though because it's like it happens to be like of the Bresson films I've seen, which is not all of them, but a majority of them at this point.
Hmm.
It's probably the one of the ones that I've seen that is the most optimistic, which is funny to say, right? Like because I mean, like, I think we saw. Did we watch Balthazar for the show? I think we saw
Yes,
Alzar Balthazar.
we
That one
did.
has like a very sad ending in which like a donkey dies, and
Yeah.
it's very sad. You know, Pickpocket. It's kind of like about poverty and stealing, and it sucks. And Man Escaped. Even Man Escaped. Even I would argue that Four Nights of a Dreamer has a more optimistic ending than A Man Escaped, because even in A Man Escaped, even when he does escape, and you're like, yeah, he escaped, even it still like feels bad because then he like you remember like he walks into the mist and you're just kind of like, oh right,
Yeah.
the world, like the rest of the world. Like
The
he has
world
to go
isn't
into
better.
the world. Like it's not like everything stopped being the way that it was. Like now he has to traverse the world, and he's probably not going to make it. So anyway, uh, Four Nights of a Dreamer for some reason is still the more optimistic Bresson movie, even though it is like a movie like about like suicide and lost connections and
Hmm.
all this different stuff. So yeah.
I mean, you're right. I've seen also most of his films, and it's not that his films are. I mean, they're very pessimistic and they're sad, and but they're not like
Yeah.
they don't seem negative necessarily in the sense of, there's just like the world's evil and there's nothing we can do about it. They're just sad movies where sad things happen to sad people. And in this too, I mean, it almost opens on a suicide, right? We have an almost suicide very early in this film, and then of course the rest of the film is just these two people talking, and it's
Yeah.
one of the things that's so beautiful about this film, and I kind of get lost in my head with this, which is, when I'm working on a film, when I'm writing a film, or I'm working on a set, or I'm directing a film, is I'm always afraid that the film's just going to end up being people talking to each other, and that's all it's going to be. And I'm like, oh, well, then, like, what's the point of like making a film? Like what value are you adding, right? What is the visual thing here? And Bresson has this amazing ability in this film in particular, where it's not a plot driven movie. I mean, Bresson's kind of like his
Well,
plots they're
he has a
there,
good
but they're
structure though. He has a good structure that's built into the title,
hmm
right? Of where it's like 4 nights. It's a movie over 4 nights. Great. Like that's awesome. Man Escaped is also the same thing. You know how it ends, right?
Yep.
He escaped.
A man escapes.
So a man escapes. And it's like, okay, that's great. Awesome. Great. And I mean, and so yeah, this movie kind of has like that built in the title, kind of like that structure.
Mm, yeah.
Which I do appreciate. Like his movies like are ironclad. Like they're
Yep. Yeah.
actually yeah, like they're very well constructed
Mhm.
like movies, I would say.
Yeah, they're films that never there's no fat to them, they have
No.
exactly what you need and there's nothing else there. And even in this film or in all of his films, like there's always a very specific goal in mind, like a thing they're moving towards, but it's not that Hitchcockian MacGuffin where, right, they're chasing after this thing. I mean, his films can be they're very simple plot lines, and yet it doesn't matter. I mean, this film is just like it's just people talking for 4 nights. Like that's the premise of the entire, and that's all it is, right? That it's just two people talking to each other, and then a couple of scenes from a year in the past, and them doing what they do, and yet there's something just very
Yes.
touching and beautiful about it. And I think part of it has to do with the pacing of this film. I think the editing is very beautiful because we have a lot of takes where it's just like we've decided to put the camera here and this is where it's going to be,
Hmm.
right? There's not a lot of cutting between takes. And I think that's really important in a film like this. I think often when we're making films where not a lot is physically happen, we have this desire to make more cuts, right? To create this sort of energy that isn't there. But Bresson, and this is true with a lot of his work, is he's aware that the pacing's happening not between the cuts, but what's on the screen, right? The mise en scène, if you will. And so you can sit there and watch just two people talk because he understands the pacing. He understands where we're going and why we need to do this. And it's also a very musical film. There's a lot,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. This is something that I noticed about the movie too that's very different than other movies is that, okay, one of the things that brought Bresson does not like to use music in his movies, right?
No.
Like score. Like he doesn't
Hmm.
like to use score. Like there's a lot of diegetic music though in this movie
Yeah.
to the point that the movie will kind of like stop in its tracks to like let like music play. Like the beautiful scene where they're at the river and the boat comes by
The
and that band
boat.
is playing and they're playing beautiful music. Great
Hmm.
scene. And it just kind of just it's just sort of like it just kind of the movie just kind of stops while they go like listen to it. Just like it's just like a kind of like a realistic moment of something that they would do if they were there together, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Right? They would stop their conversation and maybe like listen to it and until the boat goes by, which they do. And so, that's a good, nice moment and scene that you can take in and it's not necessarily here or there in terms of like the story, but like who cares? You know what I mean? It's like very, very good moment. And a few other moments happen where they listen to music. But yeah, for the most part, Bresson doesn't have any score or anything like that.
No.
And it kind of goes with his. his philosophy of actors, right? And that like they should be models, as he
Hmm.
calls them, right? And that they do not um and any other director that would do this would like be seen as like a hack or like an idiot, right? Like to not have like his actors act.
Yeah.
But I think I read like a Roger Ebert quote where he said like what did he say? He said something like I think it was about Four Nights in a Dream of a Dreamer. He said like um oh my gosh, I can't find it. I can't. Oh yeah, he said that. He said Roger Ebert wrote that Bresson's directorial style resulted in films of great passion because the actors didn't act out the emotions; the audience could internalize them. I kind of like that, just because it's like he's kind of saying that like you're kind of just like you're you're leaving even more up for imagination and interpretation by the audience, which is something that
Yeah.
I do like a lot. Um, I don't necessarily think you have to show or do everything in a movie in order to make it like effective. Like you can leave things up for like interpretation, imagination, and as Ebert said, internalization.
Yeah.
So I find that way more compelling than if, it is kind of funny though when like a person lifts up their head and like they have tears, but they're not making any noise, like
Mhm.
their face isn't even red. It's just like their tears just to show that they are sad about the situation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, again, any other director would be seen as like a weird hack if they did something like this. But with Bresson, like he does it perfectly. I love the way that he has his actors just kind of be stoic and have and show no emotion or whatever. Apparently, he would do takes over and over and over again too with people just to like really grind them down so that they're not showing any emotion. It's pretty amazing.
It it's very careful and it's very balanced in that I think it would be very easy to do the opposite, especially in a film like this where so much is dependent on our performances, where so much is dependent because so much time is kind of just spent with these two actors. I think it'd be very easy for a director then or now or at any time to want them to have these really big emotions because so much of the film is carried by these two people. And I'm going through the actors here, and the guy who plays Jack, this is his only film credit. He has
No,
no
this
other
is
film
no,
credits.
this is nothing new, Austin. Every movie is like that. Every movie has like
Yeah.
basically has no name actors, like basically
Mhm.
like nobodies, like in every single movie that he makes. And that's on purpose because he doesn't want like a movie star to be in his movies because it would be distracting from the premise of the film, I suppose.
Yeah, and Jack DT, right? He had the same philosophy. I mean, when he was making Playtime, his idea was, I could spend $10 million paying some big actor, Cary Grant or Humphrey Bogart, to be in my film, or I could spend it on the film itself. And I think you see that in Bresson and Jack DT and a lot of these filmmakers.
I would say that a Tete movie is way more expensive than a Bresson movie. So I feel like I feel like Bresson probably could have spent the money on it. But he again, I feel like he feels like it would detract right from the what he's trying to do, which is like the actors are models.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to. We're supposed to. We're supposed to transfer ourselves onto them rather
Hmm.
than look at an actor acting. You know.
Yeah. And there's something, in the idea that, I mean, as great as, a Jimmy Stewart is, and you love to see him in a great performance,
It's like
is
that's
there,
Jimmy Stewart,
that's Jimmy
like
Stewart,
that's
right?
Jimmy
Every time,
Stewart. That's something,
every time
that's
you see
George
it.
Clooney, that's Brad
Hmm.
Pitt. Yeah.
And it's fundamentally distracting. I think that's where a lot of modern day films. I think it's a struggle. Is right. We've built a world where we're selling actors, right? Where like a film is sold by actors, and so even films that I enjoy that I go see in a movie theater now, there's something distracting about it because I can't think of the last movie I saw, modern movie, right? A movie that's come out in the last couple of years where I didn't know at least one of the actors, right? At least one of the actors wasn't a famous actor. And sometimes an entire film is built around just like having, I mean, I love Wes Anderson, but like the way he
Yeah.
sells his movies is there's like 50 famous actors in it, right? And I understand like there's a
Yeah.
marketing
That's
ploy
how
in
they
that,
sell them.
but
Yeah. People
but
care.
like you lose something in that, right? Like
People care
you
more
lose
about
that.
actors than they do about like writers or directors.
Hmm.
So they're usually at the forefront of like a reason why like a person would go out to see a movie. it is what it is.
And I get it. And I mean, there's a lot of great actors with big names and, they should be celebrated, but it is nice to
Yeah.
watch, the Italian neorealists and people of, who have adopted those sort of ideologies who aren't taking big name actors or a lot of times aren't even taking professional actors because, there's the idea of right, the director of Bicycle Thieves. He's like, I didn't want real actors because real actors couldn't do like what I need them to do. Like they couldn't have the performance
Hmm.
that I need. Because the problem is like once you see
Yeah.
yourself as an actor, there's a certain authenticity that's lost in it. And he's like, no, I'm like capturing like real feeling, like the way people actually feel.
Yeah.
And
There are
in this
plenty of movies
film,
that are like
his
that too. People have
yeah,
continued to do that.
hmm
Even, like Kurosami does that for the
yeah,
most part. He's some exceptions. Like Taste of Cherry, I think has a very famous actor in it. But like, when he does like Close Up, or Close Up has like a famous filmmaker in it. But you know what I mean? Like, he has movies where it's just kind of like, not very famous people.
hmm
Uh, that's the first director that comes to mind that does stuff like Bresson, where he uses no name people in his movies. Yeah.
it's beautiful, and I love it because I think it's not that actors are important. Actors are very important, but also at the same time, I think they're a carrier of the story. They're kind of just a piece. They're something in which like they're the window in which we see the story through. And this idea of internalizing where when you have this flatness, right, when you're not giving these big emotions, is it asks more of the viewer. And I think that is something that a lot of filmmakers are afraid of, right? They're afraid to ask their viewer to place their right to kind of press themselves onto that because they don't have that kind of control. I'm currently reading the biography of Alfred Hitchcock, The Dark Side of Genius, I think is the name of the book. And Alfred Hitchcock was famously someone who always wanted to control everything, right? There's famous for very long pre-productions and very specific ways of how he wanted his actors to work and how he wanted the audience to feel. And so he's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think there is value in that, right? I love Psycho and Birds and a lot of his films. But I'm also very interested in a director who is willing to allow his audience to feel what they need to feel and not necessarily those emotions
But
be the same for each
but
person.
Bresson was a control freak though, too. Though you know what I mean? Like he was not like he. It's not like he's like I don't think he's any different than Hitchcock, right? Like he's a
hmm
control freak. He just wants something different than Hitchcock, right?
Mm.
Like he wants a different product than him. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I know what
get.
you're saying. I know what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. More on the, I guess the receiving end than necessarily the end of creation in and of itself. But because a film like Four Nights of a Dreamer,
he's a dreamer. He's a dreamer.
it's a
He's a dreamer. I
he's
don't
a
know why.
dreamer.
I don't know why. Like me saying that he was a dreamer. It made me like. It almost like made me go into like a Donald Trump impression of him. Like, can you imagine like Donald Trump like talking about like Four
You
Nights
had the
of a
hand
Dreamer?
motions. You were there.
He's a dreamer, folks. He's a dreamer. It's 4 nights across 4 nights. I love Robert Bresson. He's a dreamer. Yeah, he saved that woman. I would have done the same. I don't have a great Donald Trump impression. Some people have amazing Donald Trump impressions. Mine's like a 4 out of 10. Like I don't know. It's just okay.
It needs
But
some work.
you're not a great. It needs some work. Yeah, yeah. I think I also been a little sick, so like I think
Okay.
also that also has like an effect.
Otherwise, it would be a 9 out of 10 performance.
Otherwise, like it would be like a really awesome like performance. Exactly. So, but yeah, I don't know why I like was like, oh yeah. But anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, we were just talking about actors. I mean, that's just my thoughts on acting. Is that just like, yeah, like the Bresson movie is great when he does his the way that he directs his actors is great.
hmm
Yeah, and again, just kind of talk about how the movie looks. Like I do love when Bresson uses color. And
Yeah.
there's some beautiful shots of the city, of night. The way he shoots the nighttime is really amazing and beautiful. And it's a story that I find to be very I think like every guy or man or whatever has probably felt like this kind of way before, or even like women, like you could like look at yourself as, like you could like look at the genders as swapped and it's probably something like, you know what I mean? So
hmm
I think like the story is a very lovely and compelling one. And yeah, like the idea of like this wayward artist, and when they meet and they talk about each other, about themselves, I'm like locked in. I'm like, I'm paying attention, right? And he's like, yeah, he talks about like, I don't talk to anyone, I don't do anything, right? Like there's that one great scene where he's like making eyes to different women as he's walking around or whatever. And it seemed like that is so fucking funny because it's like because of the way that Bresson's actors like act, they just like stare at each other. Like they don't like smile. You know what I mean? Like in real life and in another movie, they would there would be some kind of reaction, but instead they just like stare at each other, right?
Hmm.
So I find like a scene like that very funny. And this movie honestly is like kind of funny. Like it's like one of the more
Yes.
funnier
Oh
Bresson
yeah.
films.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his films aren't famous for being the funniest films in the world, but I
No.
think there's some moments in this that are worth laughter. Like they make me chuckle, and I don't know if it necessarily is intentional or not, but there's kind of silly things in
Yes.
it that they're very enjoyable. And that scene where he is following the woman
Like different
around
women. Yeah.
different women, right? And it's this idea this it's a really intriguing idea of like how he perceives love, and maybe it's not the most optimistic idea of love, but right, these are both people who aren't in love with people really. Like neither of them are really in love with people. They're both in love with the idea of a person, right? They've kind of created right both the
Yeah, definitely
artist
the guy too. Well, I would say
definitely.
like the women, like she kind of fell in love with the guy, and then he quickly disappeared, and she's
But I
kind of
mean,
like,
like she didn't know him very long.
she's pining for him, right? And
Yeah.
but in the dreamer, he really is kind of like he literally says at the beginning of the movie or close to the beginning of the movie, she's like, I'm waiting for the one or whatever. So like he really is like uh you know trying to imagine the perfect woman for him all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and there's another enjoyable moment is late in the movie, right? He sees her name everywhere, March. He's walking around, he sees it like on a boat, and he sees it in a shop and all these different places. And I think it has to do with this idea that he himself, right? He's not really in love with her because he doesn't really know a lot about her, right? He's only met her a couple of times, and I don't think that connection of like true love is there. It's more like he sort of doomed himself because he's right, he lays in his bed and he writes these poems about what it means to be in love, and like
Well,
what
he makes his awesome paintings too.
and he
I
makes
love
these
too the way he
paintings.
paints. The way he paints is so great. Like, where he just kind of kneels down and he puts a little splotch right there and he puts another splotch over there. Like, I love that character. It's a great Bresson character where he's got the tape thing, and like he's on the bus and he's like playing like a recording of her name out loud,
Mhm.
and he's just kind of like a weird guy, so
He
a
is a weird
very
guy.
people would call him like a hopeless romantic, I think, right?
Hmm.
Like, and to a T, right? Like a capital H, capital R. So and a character like that, can be a little aggravating or kind of like, all right, bro. But I don't know. I kind of like I like it in this movie. I think like the French,
The French helps, right?
the French, yeah, like the French language, the location,
Hmm.
the all of it together, I think creates like a very powerful effect. So that it's not like cloying or makes you roll your eyes, I would say. So it definitely has that going for it.
And that to me is very impressive because I don't know, maybe it's just the films I've seen lately is like I get very irritated by decisions that filmmakers make, and especially when they're kind of leaning into these cliches. And it's not that these
Sure.
people don't exist, but I think it's so easy for a film like this, and particularly this performance, to just be this really over the top kind of cheesy thing that just doesn't fit, and it kind of irritates you, and you're like you're not living in reality. But I mean, I think maybe part of it is just that this is a non-actor playing this role, and then part of it is just there's something very endearing about
Yeah.
him. I mean, even
Yeah, he
though he
is.
is this hopeless romantic, there's nothing like overtly sexual about it. I mean, not in a way that feels weird or creepy. And I think that's something that's like right
Yeah.
on the edge there, right? Because like it could very quickly become something that's like this feels like kind of icky, kind of
No, I
creepy.
mean, he like, yeah, like even though like you can barely understand, like you can barely, like even when you don't really even when you can't really tell how he's feeling or how he
Mhm.
acts, y- it, I think the audience is led to believe that he's like a genuine guy.
Yeah. No, I agree. He feels like someone who's trying to find some hope and happiness. There's that line early on in the film where she asks them, are you always happy? He's like, no, like sometimes I,
No,
I have terrible days.
yeah,
It's a great line.
no, I have terrible days. Yeah, yeah, he says like really funny lines. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm. But
yeah,
I
and
love those ebbs and flows, right? That this idea
yeah.
that like they're not living, and I think maybe that's part of why it makes him as a character so endearing and her as a character so endearing is they're not these people who are always at their lows or always at their highs. There's something very, I keep saying genuine, but I do think that's the right word here, in that they're not experiencing the most absurd things in the world, right? It's not the hardest day of their life. It's not the easiest day of their life. They're kind of just living these
Well, I
very
don't know.
normal lives.
She almost kills herself at the beginning of the movie, if you
It
remember.
happens to all of us.
Yeah, I guess so. Have you ever read Have you ever read White Knights? Have you read that yet? Have you ever
No.
read that? Yeah. I haven't either. That's one of like the few Dostoevskys I haven't read yet. Because it's an adaptation of White Knights.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if you read it or have any perspective on it.
I'm surprised I haven't, because I've read a lot of Dostoevsky stuff, so I'm surprised that.
I think it's like one of his shorter works.
Oh, okay.
I think yeah, it's like about a guy that wanders around and talks to people or whatever. White Knights.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it's um fellas, like yeah, like you said, we've all been there. Been at the bridge, you know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, and I like to like when uh like people start showing up, right? Because they're concerned. But again, they can't, they don't can't react. I don't know. It's just like I just feel like, yeah, like I said before, and I hate to repeat myself, but I just feel like Bresson uses like the fact that like people that his actors can't act to comedic advantage in the film.
Yeah. And I think there is something about when you're using non-actors in this, I think this is where a lot of people go wrong when they're using non-actors, is they bring non-actors onto sets and they try to treat them as actors. And I think that's kind of the great flaw. It's like the reason you bring non-actors isn't because you want them to do what actors are doing. If you want an actor to do what an actor does, you bring an actor. You bring a non-actor because they don't have the specific, because like the moment a camera turns on for an actor, right, they're giving it a performance. The great thing about non-actor is you can kind of, if done correctly, you can move around that, right? You can move around that need to perform and kind of just
Yeah,
get these performances that they're coming from a place they're like, oh, this is just what I would do, right? They're not thinking about, oh, what is my motivation here? What was my
right.
character thing? It's like, no, like just do
They're
the
thinking
thing,
about it too
right? Like
hard. Yeah,
just walk down the street and experience
yeah,
life. And so when you can kind of capture that, when you can capture these moments where they're not performing, they're not acting, they're just living their lives, you get something really intriguing and you're forced as a viewer, right? Because I think in a film like this, we kind of feel like we're just sitting with them, and that's the beautiful thing of it. Like I feel like I'm just sitting next to these two people and just, right, I feel like I'm, in a coffee shop or at a cafe and I'm just
sure.
watching
Yeah,
this couple across the street, right? And you don't know
and you're just
everything.
like,
You know,
you're just like,
you,
why are they not like? They're not like, why are they acting like robots?
you...
That's how I would think in that situation. Yeah,
But there's something, there's one of the interesting things about this film is there's a very interesting use of handheld, because Bresson isn't famous for using a lot of like shaky handheld shots, and then these handheld shots aren't the sort of Sam Raimi like super shaky camera, but there's these
hmm,
moments in the film where he will cut to a shot that's handheld, and a lot of times the handhelds aren't when they're on the people, right? It's not when they're on their faces or a wide. A lot of times it's a close up or a shot in the distance or a shot of a doorway, and there's just like the tiniest bit of movement there, right? It's just like the littlest bit of movement that feels very POV-esque in the sense that I feel like I'm part of the film, right? It doesn't feel like someone
Mhm.
has set up a camera and they have decided that this is where this goes. It feels very much that I'm existing with them, and I think that use of handheld is really interesting because it
Yeah.
kind of moves in the way we as humans move, right? Like we're always kind of moving just a little bit. We're rocking back and forth, side to side, and there is a little bit of that in this film, even though it's like a very calm, still film. There's not a lot of like fast movements, even when the camera does move. It's usually very like gentle and smooth, but
Mhm.
when we use
Yeah,
these
smooth.
handhelds, it's just enough to feel like, oh, like I'm in this moment. I'm with these people. I'm kind of living the lives that they're living. And I think that's a very hard thing to do well because often when we make a film, we want to create that distance, right? Like we don't want to be the John Wick. We don't want to be right this grand character and there's that sense of bigness and grandness, the Ben-Hur, right? But with a film like this, you kind of have that opposite effect. You want to be in there. You want to be as close as you can and be part of it. And you know, I watched this film two times, and a lot of times I struggle to watch a movie once I've seen it before because like, oh, I know what's gonna happen. Like I kind of know all the beats. But with a film like this, I know I made a comparison to Jacques Tati, even though they're very different filmmakers. The one similarity that I see in these films is they're films that I can kind of just turn on and be with. There's nothing about these where I never feel like I need to get to the next beat. Even though I'm like, I know there's gonna be four nights. I know he's gonna dream. I know there's a suicide at the beginning. I know these things are gonna happen, but you just kind of want to be in the moment. And I think that use of music is really interesting because other filmmakers and filmmakers that I love, I think of there's this really great scene in Samuel Fuller's early film, I Shot Jesse James. And there's this great music scene, right? They're at a dance hall, and there's this really great moment where the guy's playing a piano and like another guy's playing a guitar, and it's this really like fun, upbeat scene. But it's kind of it's a scene in a movie.
Yeah.
It has that sort of effect where
Yeah.
in this film, whenever we see the music, I mean they stop in their conversation, but it kind of just feels like you're watching these people play, right? You kind of just come in the middle of a song, and you watch them for
Yeah.
little bit, and then they go away. And there's
Yeah.
something like really beautiful and peaceful. It's that sense of I think about this film like these kind of these individual moments, right? It's kind of a collection of these moments that are fleeting. And I think the music is so important in this film because this is a very short film. It's only an hour and 22 minutes. And music probably takes up like 10 or 15 minutes. So a significant portion of this film. But I think those music scenes are so important because they are representative of what's happening in this movie, which is that it is a film of these fleeting moments, right? Like we're not there at the beginning. We're not like we're in the middle of like when we meet someone, right? We're in the middle of their life. Like they've lived a life before and they'll live a life after. And we can only capture them in these seconds. Him running around with his little recorder, right? Recording things like he's trying to capture, right, a moment. He's trying to capture a second. And then, the
Yeah.
recording of like the pigeons, right? And them cooing. And it's like, when you play it back, like you're repeating the same, but every time you play it, it's different, right? It's never, even though it's the same recording, it's the same thing happening. You never have that same experience twice. And so with the music, it's so like live and momentary, and then it's never gonna happen again. Just like these two characters, right? They meet each other, they talk to each other. He tries to help her out, and then at the end of the movie, right, she leaves, and then that's it, and then he's off to dream
Yeah.
again.
Four Nights and a Dreamer. You know, Four Nights and a Dreamer. Yeah. No, um it's kind of funny because it's like the most inaccessible. It's like the movie. It's like the Bresson film that like has been the hardest to watch, but it's the most accessible, I would say. Like I would recommend people watch this one if you want to watch Bresson because it's like Hip Hop is good, but that movie's jarring.
Yeah,
Like that movie's like really jarring when you watch it for the first time. And Man Escape is like that movie is just like
it's
also
tough.
really like tough. Like and like and like his movies are so um yeah, just crazy. So and this movie is kind of like has like a story and has like a structure that's very clear and distinct and relatable.
Hmm.
And um so is it arguably his best movie? Hmm. Just because it
I
is
don't
like the
know.
most accessible one or the most like or the one that has like not because it's the most accessible one, but just
Yeah.
because it's like it's got it just kind of hits it kind of hits everything. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. It's up there for me.
Yeah.
Another Bresson movie that I watched recently was The Devil Probably, which is another late period Bresson.
Hmm.
That's like a 10 out of 10 movie for me,
Wow.
I would say. Yeah, like that was like one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Wow.
This movie comes close. So that's like how like, you know, crazy I feel about these two movies.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's like so like I don't know. Outside The Devil Probably, just I wouldn't recommend The Devil Probably for people trying to get in Bresson because that movie's very dark. That it's very sad. It's basically just about like why everything sucks. It's just like about why everything is just like going to shit, man. Like, it's just so it's like kind of one of those like kind of like leftist like post 1968 protest films where it's just kind of like, yup, we
right.
failed. Like everything is fucked now. So I wouldn't recommend that one, but I saw a lot of I saw a lot in it, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, all of his films are so beautiful and near perfection. It's hard for me. I mean, the first Bresson film I ever saw was A Man Escaped, and I think for me that was a great entry point because it was sold to me when I watched the film. It was in this collection of like escape films, so it was kind of easy for
Yes.
me to get into it in a
Like
certain
prison break
sense,
films
right? It's
like
like
Escape from Alcatraz and stuff like that,
mm
kind of in
right.
that
I was kind
yeah.
of like that's the idea. I was like, oh, and but then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, this is really sad. This is a really sad movie, and even when and like right, very stressful film, and even when you finish the film, you're like, God, I mean, what was the point of the escape? Which is kind of like the point of the film, right? It's like you escape prison just for like a larger prison. I mean, it's doing the same thing Lord of the Flies does, right? They finally get saved from the island, only to be like, well, you're just part of another world war. Like it's not.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go, right? There is no safety. Like you were safer inside the prison than outside of it. And yeah, this film is a lot e- easier. I think is maybe accessible is the right word here because I mean on the
Yeah.
one hand like it's not nearly as sad as his other
No.
work. Like you don't leave the film just like, man, the world kind of sucks. Right, you kind of leave this film with there's a certain hopefulness like, oh, like yeah, it didn't work out with him, but like he's gonna find love and she's happy and like the things are gonna work out for them, or something's gonna happen that isn't necessarily terrible. And then also just there's something very simple about this film, and I don't mean simple in the sense that like, oh, you just grab a camera
It's
and you
more it's
go
more
and make a
it's more like
film.
pleasurable, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's use of
Mm-hmm.
music, it's colors, just everything like it's I would, it's a much more pleasurable experience than like watching like The Devil Probably or Pickpocket
Yeah.
or Man Escaped. Um so in that regard, yeah, it's definitely but it's pleasure only by like Bresson standards, I would say, obviously.
Yeah, that limitation's definitely that is a Bresson film, so you do have to go into that with that. But yeah, I mean, if you're new to Bresson, and even if like I think this is even a great film if you're still new and sort of art house cinema is the wrong word here, but like if you're kind of new to sort of the more better films, right? Like if I think it's a very good entry point for someone who hasn't seen a lot
Sure,
of
yeah.
sort of like, high tier films because it's just very it's just like very calm and relaxed. Like I just feel good when I watch this movie. I like there's something and I can never, and I can never really articulate this. And it's something that very few directors do right, which is like when I watch a Bresson film, it just feels right. Like there's something mesmerizing about it. Even though there's nothing like technically there's nothing that complicated about this film, right? There's no like crazy shots. He's not doing anything crazy with the cameras or crazy lenses or any crazy special effects. It's very
Really,
simple
no.
and yet
Yeah.
is a very mesmerizing film. Like I can't
Mhm.
turn my eyes away from this film. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that Bresson's one of the greats with, right? It's just like
I think too, like the rhythm of the way that people speak because they can't like express their emotions. They speak in like kind of like a rhythmic way. They just say a
mm,
line, say
yeah.
another, and then like and then when they finish a conversation, they just kind of turn away from each other. Because they don't
It's just over.
it's just over. Yeah, they just like the scene's like the conversation's over. Like and they can't like smile at each other or shaking. They just kind of say their lines and then they kind of turn away from each other.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Oh man. Yeah. I just I love it. I mean,
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I
Very lovely, beautiful film.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a good place to anybody is to maybe to wrap it up
Sure.
because I think
Yeah, you're probably right.
we've hit a lot of good stuff and yeah. I mean, I've seen probably half of his films now. He hasn't made a lot of films, so I've seen like six of his films and I mean, Bresson's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I don't know if there's a lot of people who are arguing against that, but this was just, it's been a very long time since a Bresson film. I think it's been 5 or 6 years since it's been a Bresson film. I went through, I basically watched a lot of his films all at once, all the ones that I could find, and haven't really watched anything since. And I don't know why I stayed away. I don't know why it took me so long to watch more of his films. I mean, obviously with this
Yeah.
one, you just couldn't find it anywhere, and that could have been
Yeah, that too.
something that held me back. So, for people who have access to this film, it's and that surprises me too that like films like Pickpocket and Man Escaped were so easy to find, and a film like this was kind
I
of
just think it's like
lost.
it's just
You know,
arbitrary. I think it's
just
just
like
like a
arbitrary
I
reasons,
think
right?
I think it's like arbitrary like distribution reasons. Like it just for some reason, it's just like hard to get like the
Mhm.
distribution rights to get the movie restored and off the ground, but eventually they were able to, make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they did. I think this movie is beautiful and hypnotizing, and I just couldn't take my eyes off it. I mean, every second, it's an hour and 22 minutes, and yet it feels like a lifetime. I feel like I've lived another life when I finish this movie. I feel like I've just existed in this other world, and I just can't wait to go watch it again. Like when I finish the film, I was like, oh, I want to watch that almost immediately again,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I want to keep living in that world. I want to find a physical version of this just so I can kind of have that, hold it close, and just turn it on,
Yeah.
have it in the background, and be with it because it's one of those films where like you can have it on the background and just you turn your head to it at any moment, and you're just like, that's beautiful, that's amazing, and
Yeah.
you can and the way he captures moments like. I feel like I could start this film 45 minutes in and not watch the first 45 minutes and still be just as intrigued in it. Because like you can like these moments are so individual and you're just kind of there. It's not something where like, oh, this pushes this, pushes this, pushes this. It's kind of like we're just here and we're just living it and
Yeah.
I love it. I just love every minute of it. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 because I think it's great.
Yeah, I'll give it a 9 out of 10 too. I'm a very big fan of it. Yeah. Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. Just a really great, beautiful, funny film. We didn't even talk about where they see the movie, the action movie scene, the action movie,
Yeah.
right? Like him, like that movie also has like some funny like score in it, right? Where the guy's dying. That's a really funny scene.
Seems great.
Yeah. Yeah, I just yeah, I appreciate kind of like it's a more playful Bresson movie, which I can appreciate. And yeah, it's just a movie that I think everyone would just kind of be on board for. So yeah, I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. You can find this podcast wherever your podcast. You also can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Have nothing to say. And thank you again.
Thanks.